Take 3 Wrestling Podcast coming to you December 27th, 2020. I'm your host, Ernest E. Christian, coming to you alongside Mike Rainier, Joe Lopez. Fellas, Merry Christmas!
It's Sunday. You know what that means.
Fuck you, man. It's still Christmas here. Joseph, you awake?
Yeah, what's up? Huh?
Joseph, you awake?
I'm barely awake. You're lucky I'm awake.
Well, it is our last show of 2020. This disastrous year. Where should we start first, guys? I think I guess we should really just dive into it. The sad news we got last night. The passing of one Brodie Lee, aka Luke Harper, age 41. Devastating news. I mean, he's off TV for a long time, since I think early October. But I didn't see this coming. Like Pat Patterson's one thing because he's a little older, you got that. Folks, in that range. But when you hear young guys who are active in the business right now, and not just active, they literally are working promotions, some big promotions right now, AEW, WWE, and you hear a death like that, it's stunning. And I remember we were talking yesterday on the RL text, and I mean, you guys were, especially Mike, was definitely, you guys sound very gutted.
I mean, unfortunately, I think stuff like this, for me, always reminds me of when we found out that Eddie passed away. Because I remember being really affected by that when that happened in 2005. So, it's hard not to remember that,
Yeah, it's funny? Not really funny, but I didn't really get to experience the Guerrero passing. I knew when it happened, after the fact, because I heard about it, but I wasn't watching at the time, currently. The only death I was watching in real time was Owen Hart.
Right. It hits really hard. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess we'll go, like you said, straight into the topic, and this is going to be my topic. And first of all, I just want to start by saying, if I sound a little different, if I don't sound as excited as I normally do on our show, I'm working hard on actually not letting myself get too built up, because I don't want to have a coughing fit or anything and then not be able to talk. But you guys obviously know, I don't mind telling our listeners, I hope you don't mind, I have COVID actively right now. I found out on Christmas Eve that I have COVID. I tested positive that day. And luckily I'm okay. This is considered a mild case. I knock on wood, and I thank the universe that I'm only dealing with a mild case. But let me tell you something. If everyone out there who doesn't take this seriously, everyone out there who's like, nah, I've got no chance of catching it, I'm going to be fine, fuck the rules, let me do whatever I want, let me not wear a mask, let me go around 50 people, yada, yada, yada. Let me tell you something. Even with a mild case, this is the worst I've ever been sick in 37 years of my life. I would not wish this on my worst enemy. And I'm a diligent person. I wear my mask everywhere. I try not to go to too many different places. I try not to interact with too many different people. You can be as careful as you want to be. There's still no 100%, it's like there's no 100% way of guaranteeing you don't catch an STD unless you don't have sex. It's like that, there's no 100% way of guaranteeing you don't catch COVID unless you literally lock yourself in your house and interact with nobody. You gotta just try to be the most careful that you can. That means wear a mask. That means wash your hands. That means do everything that the doctors are suggesting people do, everything that the CDC is suggesting people do. It's all out there to try to keep us safe. And trust me on this. I'm starting to get winded just talking now. So like it's a nightmare, and you don't want this, okay? So just please take Joe's advice for once in your life. I'm right about a lot of things, including wrestling, all the time, but I'm really right about this. So take my advice. With that said, yeah, I wanted to make my topic tonight. I just wanted to dedicate it to Brodie Lee, or Luke Harper, John Huber, the man's real name, whoever you want to remember him tonight. And I just want this to be about memories about him, honestly, because for myself at the very least, I can speak personally and say that I've been a fan of his since about 2008. When I started going to Chikara shows in Pennsylvania, and then they started doing shows in New York, and he was an impressive big guy on a roster back then that was full of nothing but small guys. That's what Chikara was. And he could fly with the small guys, he could do dives out of the ring. He could do all these things, and he was amazing to watch. And I think even back then, you kind of had the sense of, all right, this guy's gonna get signed at some point. This guy's gonna make it to the big leagues. That was a feeling that I think a lot of us had at the time when we were watching him. And then he made it into Ring of Honor, and then eventually did in fact get signed by WWE, and then of course end up in AEW most recently. And it was an honor to get to watch his career. It's a damn shame to have to be able to say that in a way where it's now final. It's not that it's a continued honor. It's now that it's over, and it's a damn shame, because I do think that he had a lot more room to grow as a performer, and but this isn't about the what ifs. This isn't about the would he have been world champion one day or anything like that. Like, I feel like we all kind of know the answer to that anyway, and I think the answer is probably yes. But this isn't the nice thing is, it's not like he didn't leave us with a long and pretty big career and pretty big resume that we all get to look back at. And excuse me. I give WWE credit. They've already got up on the network a section in honor of Luke Harper, and you can see a lot of his best moments in WWE right there. So if you're someone who maybe only discovered him, sorry. If you're someone who maybe only recently discovered him when he joined AEW, or maybe you're someone who fell off on wrestling a while ago and like you do remember him from like the early 2010s, but you didn't watch all the way through or whatever, go to the WWE Network, check out the collection that they've put up. There's some great stuff there. There's some Wyatt family versus the Shield matches that are fantastic. There's Luke Harper's match with Randy Orton from a pay-per-view that was honestly really, really great. There's a couple of documentaries on there. There's a lot of great content. And that's the thing, like, I think that you don't necessarily realize how much great content this man gave us, but he really did. He really was a big part of the last decade of wrestling.
Totally
for a lot of us that are fans, I mean,
totally agree with you there.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, like I said, look, I can go back to like 2008. I can go back to Chikara. I can go back to him and Cesaro, who's in WWE right now. His name back on the NBC was Claudio, and the two of them, they were like the two giants in the land of the midgets. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they were in Chikara. They were the guys that were like 6'5", while everybody else was 5'6". And they had a feud that was incredible in Chikara. And it was it was the kind of feud that you watch and you were like, both these guys are going to make it. And sure enough, they both did, and that their feud ended in a steel cage match. It was actually the first steel cage match in Chikara's history. You can find it. I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube right now. It might be available elsewhere. I think Smart Mark Video still probably sells the DVD. I used to have a copy of it. I would love to have a copy of it again, if I'm being perfectly honest. It's a great match. That's worth going out of your way to find. Anything, honestly, like there's nothing from his career that I can think of that I would sit here and be like, oh, that's not worth watching. And I think that says a lot, like he's not like maybe I can't sit here and be like, here's a list of, 50 5-star matches, but I could sit here and genuinely say you could watch a retrospective of his career and not be anything less than entertained, and then there are 5-star matches in there. The Wyatts versus the Shield, there's a 6-man tag match. I think it was at like an Elimination Chamber pay-per-view or something like that. I don't remember. Huh?
It was.
Okay. Yeah, it was that match, as far as I'm concerned, put both stables literally on the map and made me care about both of them in a way that I wasn't sure I ever would have been able to before that match. So I can't recommend that one enough. You have to go watch that. And the thing is, I've had a lot of interactions with a lot of wrestlers over the years. I can't say to you that I've had any interactions with Luke Harper or Brodie Lee. I never had the pleasure. I never had the opportunity to meet him in that capacity, and that disappoints me because everything that I've heard in the last few days, everything that we've all heard and we've all seen online say that this man was the sweetest, nicest, most loving man, to fans, to friends.
Yeah, that's the thing that stands the most is the
family.
condolences. It's been so touching to read all the feedback from the wrestling community, not just people in AEW, but people in WWE and even the fans, and the impact he had. Like it's touching, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, not only it is touching, and it almost makes it even sadder in a lot of ways, because, I mean, it's a cliche to say, like, only the good die young, but then, you hear someone pass away at the age of 41, and then you hear how an amazing person he was, and, I mean, yeah, nothing but condolences to the people who actually were really close to him. Nothing but condolences to his family and his 2 young kids and his wife. Yeah. We're wrestling fans, and that creates a community. We're all part of this little community, and it's funny because I think a lot of the time the wrestling fan community is usually mostly known for kind of just arguing with each other, and kind of just being at each other's throats over, which company's better or which wrestler's better or how much John Cena sucks. And, that's kind of the highlights and the things that people tend to think of when they think of the wrestling fan community. But I'm going to tell you, having been part of some, having made a lot of friends in the community and seeing, when stuff like this happens, I feel like you do get to see a different side of the wrestling fan community. And, I sometimes I feel proud of us. Sometimes I feel not embarrassed to be a wrestling fan and not ashamed and, and actually pretty honored to have a love for something and a passion for something that so many people share. And this is actually one of those times, because seeing everybody kind of share their memories and seeing people saying all these nice things and everything, it's nice, it's genuinely nice. I wish that we didn't have to sit here and share happy memories about somebody because they've sadly are no longer with us and were stolen from us way too soon. But, I'm glad that we at least can, I'm glad that this man, obviously, this was his life. This was his passion. This was his love. He people don't become wrestlers because they don't know what else to do with their lives, you know? That's one of those jobs that you only get into it if you care about it and if you're passionate about it and if you love it. And then for those of us who are fans, being able to look back on someone's career, you know, all I could say is thank you, honestly, and thank him for his sacrifices and his years on the road, um, you know, away from family, away from friends. You know, I know that he didn't always have an easy time in WWE, but I'm glad to say that at least at the end of the day, we do have a lot of his work to look back on that will hopefully live forever on the WWE network. If nothing else, it'll definitely live forever in the hearts and memories of us fans. So that's mostly all that I really want to say. I'll let you guys take over and I'll chime in a little bit here and there, but I mean, it's such a sad thing, but you know, at the end of the day, we do have such a great body of work from him that he was able to give us in the last decade or so, and I cherish that right now more than anything else. I really do.
Go, Mike.
Yeah, so Joe hit the nail on the head with the stuff in Chikara. His stuff with Claudio was some of the best stuff from two big guys that you would see, because the land of wrestling when it first became a thing was you didn't see guys their height and size doing, flips and, big stuff like that, and Claudio was doing crazy stuff, and, it takes two to tango and you need a dance partner. And there wasn't anybody better for Claudio in Chikara than Brodie. Those guys worked really well together. I remember watching the cage match just recently, and thinking back to going, man, those guys could really go. I wish they would have been able to go on a bigger stage because of how, well they worked together. But, it didn't work out because, Brodie wasn't there anymore, and it sucked. Just thinking about it now, it sucks even more now. Brodie then, decided to team with a 3'7" lumberjack named Grizzly Redwood as the Roughnecks and that was
Yeah.
fun because Brodie got to be fun then. Like you could see that he was having more fun, and it wasn't as serious. When he was with Grizzly, he was supposed to be in the 12 Large Summit, honoring Larry Sweeney and to determine the first Chikara champion, but had an injury and couldn't wrestle in it. And I probably ate him alive because I know how much he cared about Sweeney and he cared about Chikara. He got to have, his last, real match in Chikara before he went to WWE against one of his best friends in Eddie Kingston, which was a really good match. A lot of people forget that he wrestled in Dragon Gate USA and in Dragon Gate in Japan. Wrestled a couple matches in Evolve at the early beginning of that. It's a guy where he became really, really, really good in ring when he signed with WWE. And his signing was one of those. I remember talking to Joe about it when he signed. I said, if given the right thing, he could be probably one of the best wrestlers to come out of the independent promotions in the last 10 years, 15 years. It was like him, Brian, Seth, those guys. Like those were the three that I always went back to. It was Brian, it was Seth, and it was Brodie. And he was kicking ass in Japan when he decided to come over. Debuted in NXT in 2012 as Bray Wyatt's first son of the Wyatt family. So he was really working with Bray and with Rowan for a while. And to see the amount of pain that the three of them, including Braun Strowman, are in, knowing that he's gone, is what I think hurts more than anything else. He won the NXT tag titles with Eric, and then they decided, hey, let's split up the best act we had for a while. Joe makes mention of the Wyatt family Shield match that is probably one of the best 6-man tag matches if not the best 6-man tag match that WWE's put on in the last 10 years.
Oh yeah, hands
You know,
down.
you could put the Evolution Shield match with it just because of how much that match meant, but it's in the same conversation. It's not even close to being that far away from it. They had great matches with the Usos for the tag titles. Those guys really they took it to another level when they were in the ring with those guys. He breaks apart from the Wyatt family and then has a little like hiccup with the IC title. Doesn't hold it long. He was in the ladder match at WrestleMania that Bryan won the title. I remember talking to Joe before that match started, and I was just like, "Who do you think's gonna win?" And we both wanted Bryan to win, obviously, because Bryan's one of our guys. I said, if Brodie walked out with the belt, I wouldn't be upset, and I hold that to my heart. Is that I wouldn't have been upset if he won that match that night. Then he goes back to the Wyatt family, and it felt like everything was whole. It felt like everything was right. It was the Wyatts. It was Wyatt. It was Harper. It was Rowan. They added Braun Strowman into the mix, and it just felt right. The gimmick was back to where it should have been. And then he gets hurt again, and Rowan gets hurt, and they become the Bludgeon Brothers, which this is probably like my least favorite part of Brodie's career because I just didn't really like the gimmick.
But he made it work.
But they made it work.
They
Him
both
and Eric, both made it work to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
So it's just if I had to pick a spot where it's like this is probably my least favorite Brodie, it'd probably be that. But he still found a way to make it entertaining, and I think that's the most important thing.
I think one thing that's interesting too is a lot of wrestlers, even ones who don't pass away, even guys who just end up getting injured and kind of having to call their career sometimes earlier than they want to, their last match ends up usually being something of a whimper. You know what I mean? Like for a long time before Edge came back this year, Edge's last match was a very random match at a WrestleMania against Alberto Del Rio. You know what I mean?
Our first WrestleMania.
Right, exactly. But it was like it wasn't the match that he wanted to be the last match of his career. Case in point, why he made a comeback this year. There's Eddie Guerrero's last match, if I recall correctly, is like a random tag match from like an episode of SmackDown or something. Obviously these aren't planned to be people's last matches, so you can't control it in that sense. But there's something fitting about the fact that Brodie's last match was actually kind of one of his best matches. And that was that chain match that he had with Cody a few months back on Dynamite. It's an incredible match. It's one of the best matches of this year, and none of us knew it would be his last match. Obviously, I'm sure he didn't know. But there's something to be said about that. That at the end of the day, his final match is a classic. And there's not a lot of people who kind of luck into that. That's because that's not luck. Luck's not the right word for that. But it's kind of nice that the last thing that we got from him, the lasting memory that we get, is a classic match. It's a genuinely classic match.
Yeah, I think it's fitting to, because it is the end, that was a fitting way for his wrestling career to end.
Yeah.
It sucks that we know that is the end now. Obviously we thought, he had the match. It was a grueling match. Figured that, okay, he'd be off TV for a little while. He'd come back, revamp the Dark Order, and I actually thought to myself a couple weeks ago, I'm like, man, I wonder if we're gonna get Brodie back anytime soon, and credit, I don't know if it's really quote credit or if it what, but like, let's be real here. There wasn't a peep of anything really wrong with him. there wasn't a peep from anybody in the promotion, anybody in management. This was very kept in house. And in a world in today's society where everything gets put on social media or talked about, one person slips up and says one thing to one person, and then all of a sudden it just goes nuts. Kudos to those guys for not opening Pandora's box here, and letting I guess the word I'm looking for, not unintelligent, but keeping it where his family didn't have to come home and read people running their mouth about stuff they didn't know about. And let them have their time with Brodie. And it's one of those things where I kind of have to take my hat off to those guys, because this is an industry where everything gets talked about. It's pretty bad. So kudos to Tony and Cody and the Bucks and Kenny and all them for telling and getting all their guys to believe in not running their mouths about it and talking about it, and making it more.
No, yeah, I agree with you. And that's the thing, like, like I was saying, like, look, wrestling is a community, it's a community among the wrestlers themselves. It's a community among the fans. And like, those might be two different things. Like, I don't, there's certainly an overlap, but obviously there are always going to be things that the wrestlers are privy to, and the bonds that they have that us as fans aren't going to necessarily share. And there's always going to be things that as fans that we have and we can do that is different from what the wrestlers are doing and can do. One thing that I've seen that I think is amazing and worth pointing out here, and asking people, if you're a fan of Brodie Lee, if you're a fan of CM Punk, right now all of the t-shirts on Pro Wrestling Tees, all the CM Punk shirts, any CM Punk merch you buy, all the proceeds are going to Brodie Lee's family. I think that's amazing. I think that's beyond incredible, and I'm not going to lie, I spent 20 minutes looking at all the different CM Punk shirts, trying to decide which one I was going to buy. I haven't bought one yet, but I'm going to buy one, because you know what, like, if that's the little bit that I can do to, help in some way, I want to, and I encourage everyone who's listening to do that, because, I mean, every little bit's got to help, and the fact that they're doing that, the fact that CM Punk has suggested that, or, if you, there is a Brodie Lee t-shirt, I believe, that's for sale, that you could pick up right now as well, that obviously all those proceeds go to his family as well. I think that's an incredible thing. I know WrestleMania this coming year probably not going to be something that's in front of fans. But I'll tell you, so for all you guys out there, so if you're ever at a WrestleMania and you bump into Mike and I, because we'll be there, because we're going to be at every WrestleMania you could possibly be at for the rest of our lives, as we were at the last 9. Well, not this year's, but you know what I mean.
Not your fault, though.
Yeah, right. Well, we like to wear matching shirts when we go to WrestleMania, because I'm gay and he's Mike. And that's just one of those things that we do. We wear matching wrestling shirts. And I personally would love to pick up 2 Brodie Lee t-shirts and make sure the next time we're at a wrestling show, that's the shirt that we get to wear. And I'd love it to be the next WrestleMania. I don't think it's going to be WrestleMania 38 or 37, whichever the next one is. I don't think that one's going to be in front of fans. It might be the year after, but that's something that I intend for us. I want us to be able to do that, because, I mean, look, the truth is, like, and I'm not going to get too sappy. I don't want to move away from talking about Brodie, and I don't want to monopolize this either. I'd want to hear what Ernest has to say. But, I even only ever met Mike because of pro wrestling, because of indie wrestling, because of the Ring of Honor message board. Like, that's how we met. That is literally how our last decade and change of friendship started, and that's why I say, this is a community, that's why I say that, I wouldn't have one of my best friends in my life if it wasn't for pro wrestling, and that's where, a lot of people look at pro wrestling and they're like, oh, this is corny, this is silly, this is stupid, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. It is all those things. Sometimes it's embarrassing, sometimes like I've spent more time being in the closet about being a wrestling fan than I ever did about being a homosexual, and that's just the truth, because sometimes being a wrestling fan is kind of an embarrassing thing. Sometimes the content they put out there, kind of embarrassing to admit that you watch, but at the end of the day, I have some of my best friends in the world because of pro wrestling. I have some of my greatest memories and happiest times because of pro wrestling. And it's because of people like Brodie Lee. It's because of wrestlers like that who put their bodies on the line, put their time with their family on pause, put so much of themselves into this form of entertainment that then the rest of us get to enjoy and then talk about and then, share our love and our passion for. And I think it's a beautiful thing, like I said, like, this is one of those moments, and this has been one of those weekends where, like, as sad as this has all been since yesterday, like, I'm proud to be a wrestling fan right now.
It's one of those where, I always will look up and, Joe made it a point, and I agree with him. I've seen a lot of this country because of guys like Brodie.
Yeah.
Because without that, I don't know how many WrestleManias I'd have went to. I don't know how many, SummerSlams in different parts of the world, and us doing the Big Four 2 years ago and stuff like that. It's one of those things where it's, guys like Brodie are what keep people coming back, and it's not just, Brodie in ring. It's his interaction with the fans, his interaction with the community, his interaction with his family. It's stuff like that you hear the stories. And if I can grow up when my time is over here and I can get half of the amount of people talking positive about the way that I was around my children, that the way Brodie is around his, then I feel like I've done my job.
Yeah.
So
That's watching a match right now, Brodie against Dolph Ziggler from 2014 on Raw.
Let's just say that this one sucks.
Yeah. It's funny for during my 17 years not watching, for mid-quarter he stood out because of his look, the beard, the imposing, size of him, that. I got to watch a little bit of him when he came back. Actually, I believe he returned at SummerSlam last year, where you guys are at in Toronto, after a long layoff.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, but he wasn't used much after that, though, and then he came to AEW, of course. So I didn't get to really watch a lot of Luke Harper, other than like what you watch on the network, and then those last final couple months before he got cut last year. But I will say this, and you guys accuse me of being the AEW mark, and there's some truth to that, obviously. From day one, I was not very big on Dark Order. I was not, didn't know where it was going. It felt kind of sporadic, all that. But he gave Dark Order gave relevance. He gave it organization. He gave it a belong to AEW because of him. And, him winning the TNT Championship over the summer was a big deal. The way I love how they booked that match, made him look dominant.
Yeah.
God knows if this illness was not, I imagine this is probably why he dropped the belts as soon as he did to Cody. Looking back in hindsight, probably that had a lot to do with it. But I imagine if he wasn't sick, that he was definitely a big person in their plans for this next couple of years, going into 2021. You don't just put a belt in his hands without, saying that this guy can really run, be one of our top guys. And especially the way they booked him too. They made it was a reminder, like, you remember how Lesnar beat Cena at SummerSlam, like, was dominant. same thing. He dominated Cody. So
yeah.
they made him look like $1 million. But I was touched last night. You know, we talk about community. We talk about like, you know, this, you know, one of the reasons I drew me back into doing podcasting or wrestling or whatever, the community in this, the family vibe, you know, and networking, whatever it may be. I was touched reading all the messages and condolences from all the wrestlers. You know, the one with Charlotte Flair touched me. What she said, her words, Otis's words touched me. Obviously, Bray Wyatt and what he said. I mean, obviously he's devastated. You know, there was a lot of New Day. You know what they said. Big E and Xavier Woods. It goes to show you that these people are still human beings. You know, they may look imposing on TV, but behind the scenes, these guys are teddy bears. These guys are really good people, just trying to make a living and entertain us. And again, we're reminded of that when we lose someone, we're reminded of that.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about that, but
I think what's one of the interesting things to me about the wrestling industry and the wrestlers in it today, especially, the culture just changed a lot. It feels like, in a good way, you know, in a very positive way. And I mean that because, like, if you look back at like the 80s and the 90s, you know, most of the stories that we would hear behind the scenes about pro wrestlers or like their interactions with fans and stuff like that, it was usually based around very negative things, you know. It was usually based around, you know, this person not liking this person hating this person, you know, using their backstage pull to get this person away from a push. You know, we've all heard those kinds of stories. And then obviously, even as fans, like, you know, you used to hear about fan interactions with wrestlers, and it was like, you know, it sounded like nightmares for the most part, you know. And this generation of wrestlers hasn't been like that, you know. This generation of wrestlers has seemed to be more caring and more loving and more, you know, like, it's a lot more rare now that you hear stories about wrestlers who are, you know, apparently like assholes or anything like that. I mean, I know, you know, earlier this year we heard a lot of stories about a lot of wrestlers who were apparently assholes, especially in the UK scene. But that was so shocking because that has become so rare. And I think that's a great thing, you know. The thing is, like, Brodie's part of that group of guys, though, who, like, you never heard a bad thing about, you know, and that is one of the nice things, you know. Like, any wrestler I've ever had an interaction with personally, you know, and especially in Chikara, like, you know, I know Chikara ended in a very negative way, and I know that, you know, there's obviously a lot of bad stuff there, and, you know, certain people from it, at least one person, you know, the main person, unfortunately, has colored a lot of the name Chikara in a negative light. But the truth is, like, for those of us who were fans, and for those of us who were going to shows and were watching Chikara and all that back when it was at its best, you know, they were really good times for a lot of us, you know. And the wrestlers in particular were always really awesome and really cool and really fun to interact with. Like, you know, like, look, Cesaro. Cesaro is an easy one for me to go to because one of my favorite things about Cesaro, and you wouldn't know this from watching WWE, you wouldn't know this from TV. I know this from talking to him at Chikara shows back in like 2009 and 2010. The man hates traffic in Connecticut. You get him started about, you, like, if you say the words to him, hey, Connecticut traffic, he will laughingly go on a tirade about how awful the Connecticut traffic is and how much he hates it. And
You do know that we pulled that line on him at our first show together in Ring of Honor.
Did we really?
The meet and greet on
Yes.
after the second day before the day show.
Yes,
You
with
were
him
like,
and Hero.
yes, the Kings of Wrestling. Right before we took the picture,
Yes.
I looked at him and I said, "Man, that Connecticut traffic." And he literally put his coffee cup down.
Yes, I remember this.
A like 35 to 40 second like rant / promo about how terrible Connecticut traffic and their drivers and everything about Connecticut was. And
yes.
I remember that very vividly because I remember walking away and you going, you had to get him fired up about Connecticut traffic.
Yes. But that's what I'm saying, though. It's like, those are the kind of things that are fun about being a wrestling fan and about interacting with wrestlers and stuff. And, you know, like, I never got to have an interaction like that with Brodie Lee, obviously. But I know a lot of people who have. I know a lot of fans who have. And obviously now we've seen a lot of stories from wrestlers and stuff who it sounds like this was like just the nicest guy. And that it makes it more heartbreaking. It really does.
Yeah, it really does.
You know, my last thing on it is Brodie for about 4 years, or no, probably less than that. You used to put on Twitter every day. You'd put whatever day it was, and you'd put, you know what that means. So it's Sunday. You know what that means. Rest well, sir.
Yes, sir.
Rest well.
All right. There's no easy way to segue to this, so but we gotta keep the show moving. The show must go on, obviously. This is our last show of the year. So as we did last year, I believe we did. We have we're gonna do our Tape Through Wrestling Best of 2020. We have a bunch of categories. I think about 6 categories to go through.
This week will be the nominational phase. Next week will be the going over who is the winner.
So this week we'll reveal nominees, and next week, the first show of 2021, hopefully be a better year, will be the revealing the winners. All
right. So this is my topic. So without any further ado, we're gonna jump in. There are 6 total. Sorry, 7, I think total.
I think it's 7, right?
It is 7. It's 7 different categories. This will be scored based the 9 people that are nominated. Each of us will put a ballot in. Total cumulative points will be how we determine, who the winner is. We'll start in a division that I hold near and dear to my heart. We're going to start in the tag team division. The official nominees of the Take 3 Wrestling podcast for the tag teams of the year. I nominated the Foundation, Jonathan Gresham and Jay Lethal from Ring of Honor. The North, which is Ethan Page and Josh Alexander. And I also nominated the Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa from New Japan. Joseph nominated the Young Bucks, FTR, and the team of Sasha Banks and Bayley. With Ernest nominating the Street Profits, Cowboy Bebop, which is our name for Adam Page and Kenny Omega. And for some god unknown fucking reason, he fucking nominated the Lucha Bros.
Theme song.
That's
it.
They get 1 point from me. 1. They're gonna finish 9th place. Trash. Fucking Lucha Bros.
Wait, to be fair, weren't they like tag champions in Mexico for like half the year?
I don't know.
Jonathan Gresham and Jay Lethal have been Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions for 385 days.
You have people literally watching AEW because of Lucha Bros. I got friends of mine that say they only watch it because of Lucha Bros matches.
They were gone for 6 months.
Well, get tuning in. I can't tell you. They get tuning in.
What, to see if they got through the border because of a pandemic? Stupid. All right.
I literally did that just for this reaction. Thank you, God. I can die happy.
We'll do this. We'll go to moments of the year. My 3-moment nominees: WrestleMania goes 2 nights for the first time ever. The man becomes the mom. Becky Lynch announces her pregnancy, therefore giving Asuka the Raw Women's title, and the New Day disbanding in the draft. Ernest's 3 nominees were the return of the Rated R Superstar Edge, the return of Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, you'll never see it coming, or whatever fucking stupid tagline they gave it, and Taker's farewell. Now, live on the podcast, Joe's going to give his 3 moments of the year, because Joe doesn't have a nominee for this category.
He's always last minute.
I mean, I only have COVID.
Step back, Rona.
No big deal.
Step back,
No
Rona.
big deal. No big deal. I've only had a hard time staying conscious for a week. No big deal. Well, my first moment, in the same vein as the Undertaker's retirement, I'm gonna throw Liger's retirement in there.
Liger!
Because believe it or not, even though that feels like it took place at this point 5 years ago from this
It really does
wretched
feel like it
ass
happened
year,
a long time ago.
it was in fact only back in January.
5 years ago.
So
January.
yeah, I'll give you that. I'm gonna throw the debut of Retribution on here, and I know that that's one of those moments that you look back at it in hindsight and it doesn't matter. They've blown that angle completely and utterly, and it's pretty stupid at this point. But
Correct.
When it first started, I mean, there were some big Nexus vibes. There's another blown angle. Jeez. But
They're not good with factions.
They're not. No, they're good at starting factions. They're not good at it's like that old Seinfeld bit. It's like, you can take the reservation, you just can't hold the reservation. It's like they could start the factions, they just can't keep the factions interesting. That seems to be an issue for them. But I think that belongs on the list for sure. And for a third moment, ooh, you know what? Drew McIntyre winning the world title at WrestleMania. That I wish that it had happened in front of 70,000 people, but you know what? It still happened. It was still awesome, and it still gave us, for the first time in a long time, a brand new, fully believable and long time to come main event superstar in Drew McIntyre.
I like it. We'll go to the next category, the female nominees for the female wrestler of the year. My 3 nominations were Asuka, Jordynne Grace, and Deonna Purrazzo. Ernest's were Io Shirai, Bayley, and Hikaru Shida.
Let's go.
Joseph's nominees were Rhea Ripley, Sasha Banks, and Dr. Britt Baker, DDS.
The woman who has literally carried the entire AEW women's division on her back without even having to wrestle a match for most of the year.
I was going to say, even while she was hurt.
Fair point.
Yep.
So yeah, that should be a fun category.
Well, she's a dentist.
I feel like that one's wide open.
She has the advantage though. She's a dentist, so
she's a dentist and a success.
Yeah,
and she's also dating Adam Cole. For some
reason,
who's involved in the conversation. I don't know.
Here she is, folks, the leader of the plaque. Come on, Little Shop of Horrors, you guys suck.
That was a good one. I like that one. All right, let's transition to Feud of the Year.
My favorite what category?
My 3 nominees, a little weird here. First up, Sami Zayn versus The World, because everyone's trying to keep Sami Zayn down.
I like that one. That's good.
Number 2, Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley. And finally, Joe will appreciate this one. And I nominated it because I almost wanted to just talk about how bad New Japan fucked this one up. It is Tetsuya Naito versus Evil.
Yeah, I saw that you nominated that, and when you sent me your list, and I was like, really? Because, I mean, you know me, I'm a huge Evil fan. I've been an Evil fan since, you know, he came
Everything
back
is
with
evil.
the gimmick. Yeah. As soon as he re-debuted back in New Japan with that gimmick, I was on board. I love that gimmick. I love that
Hmm.
character. I think he's fantastic in the ring. I think that they acted like they were going to give us a good push for him and then, like, took it away from us as quickly as they possibly could. Don't get me started.
Oh, we'll get there because I did this more because this year hasn't been the biggest for feuds. You know, you could talk about Seth Rollins versus the Mysterio clan, but that went about 7 months too long.
That went about 10 months too long.
So it's like I don't think that feud was all that great. At least with Naito versus Evil, we got the turn, we got the couple matches that we got out of it. Yes, they were
True.
quickly transitioned to something else, which was stupid. Because this should be a high feud going into Wrestle Kingdom, but I guess we're getting the next best alternative, which is Evil versus Sonata. So I guess I can't be too mad at that. Ernest's 3 nominees were Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre, Sasha Banks versus Bayley,
I
and
love that.
Brodie Lee versus Cody. And again, guys, on the fly, we're gonna put Joe Lopez on the spot.
Ooh.
Okay for this.
Well, I'm going to start one that I don't know you guys are going to agree with, but I'm okay with that. Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley. Because the build-up for that match was fantastic. I loved all of that. I loved, you know, Charlotte showing up at NXT. I loved Rhea showing up at Raw. That was such a great feud that, you know, and it's one of those things that you kind of wonder, like, how much of it, like, how much further it would have gone if the pandemic hadn't gotten in the way. You know, I don't think that their match at WrestleMania was going to be it. I personally think that there was probably going to be a rematch. I think that it would have gone a lot further. But obviously, you know, in this year, you know, Charlotte got injured and there obviously it was just it just didn't get the legs that it deserved. But you know what? That build up to the WrestleMania match, like that feud alone, was one of my favorites. So I mean, I'm putting that on there for sure. I would also put Roman Reigns versus. How do you even frame this? I'm not exactly sure how to put it because part of me wants to be like Roman versus Owens, but that's not all there is to it. Even though I have loved this storyline in the last month, and it's given us
How about
2 of
Roman
the
versus
best
Goldberg?
matches of the year.
Or Roman versus Goldberg?
Just
kidding.
No. You know, I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna frame this one as Roman Reigns versus everybody else at the table because he wants to be at the head of the table, and you know what? Like, y'all should just let him because otherwise he's gonna eat you. So just let him have his way. And last but not least is the much better Kenny Omega feud. And it was one of my favorite storylines in AEW this year. That's Omega and Page. And I know, like, for at least a good part of the year, they were just a tag team together. But you know what? That storyline was more than them just being a tag team, even when they were a tag team. And to me, that was great storytelling the whole way through. And I think there's a lot more story to be told with the two of them. But that was one of my favorite things in pro wrestling this year. So
I can dig it. We'll go to breakout stars of the year. I'm the only one that has 3 nominees for this because Ernest only sent me 1. Joe hasn't sent any yet. So, breakout stars, my nominees: Chris Bay from the Impact roster, Leon Ruff, who had a North American title run on NXT, and finally, your boy for the brand, Pat McAfee. Ernest's 1 nominee was Karrion Kross. I don't know if he has 2 more or if Joe has any.
now, Ernest, it's breakout star, not star who broke something. So I don't know why you went with Karrion Kross.
No, dude, honestly, I couldn't think of anybody else, honestly. Like, I would have said Keith Lee, but Keith Lee was around for a couple years already.
Keith Lee was our Wrestler of the Year last year. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
Star.
That's what I'm saying. I'm
But
like,
no, you see, okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of nominees, but they've been around. I think, though, that this year still counts as like a breakout year for them. And the first one, and you're going to look at me like I'm crazy, and I'm okay with that, is Roman Reigns. Because this is the year that they finally pulled the trigger. This is the year.
So basically, breakout star isn't like rookie of the year. It's pretty much like somebody that got a major push.
I mean, I guess you can kind of
the way I attested it would be that it would be either someone who went through a dramatic change, a la Roman Reigns, or people who came out on the scene. You know, Leon Ruff. Have you ever heard of him? No. But I had, because he was in Evolve and stuff like that. Same. And then all of a sudden he becomes like the North American champion and is in a feud with Johnny Gargano on USA TV for, 2 or 3 months. It's a pretty breakout moment. Chris Bay is the same guy who wrestled Rich Swann in the.
Can I argue Kyle O'Reilly kind of is in that department to know this year, at least with him being.
Sure, because he broke away from the Undisputed Era and had a fairly. That's
fine then. They put my down for that one then. If we're clarifying it now, then I would say Kyle O'Reilly is another one.
I'm glad we have text messages, and you could have asked this question. I could have clarified this for you.
I didn't know that
once in the last 14 days.
Why are you mad?
All right, so I'm putting Roman.
Okay.
Because, like I said, like they finally pulled the trigger on him, and he's become the biggest star in the company, hands down, no questions asked.
Joe, real quick, let me give my other two then, real quick. So Kyle O'Reilly's one. And my other one, so I have Karrion Kross, Kyle O'Reilly, and Dakota Kai.
I can respect that.
Now that's actually clarified now. I can actually...
All right, so I'm putting Roman. My next one's more of a personal one, if I'm being perfectly honest, and I'll explain where I'm coming from. It's Jonathan Gresham, and here's the thing. Until this year, I have been I have not even remotely been a fan of Jonathan Gresham. I've watched him wrestle for probably the last decade. I've seen him wrestle in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. I've seen, his work in Ring of Honor in the past and all of that. I was never a fan. I never liked him. I just never got it. I never saw the appeal. And then this year in Ring of Honor, in the last few months in particular, I'm telling you, this man is one of the best wrestlers on the planet and extremely entertaining. And, in the perfect act in Ring of Honor right now for him and for that company. Him and Jay Lethal, they are a fantastic team. I'm really glad you nominated them as Tag Team of the Year, Mike, because they are great. And that's what I'm saying.
385 plus days as Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions.
And here's the thing. Like I said, I know a lot of people, probably yourself included, who have been fans of his for years and years. So I understand that this might seem like a real WTF kind of nomination. But for me,
I wasn't the biggest Gresham guy. I mean, I respected what he did. I love that he was really good in the pure wrestling standpoint. But I feel like this year, 2020, has definitely been a breakout year for Jonathan, not only on a mainstream level, but just in ring wise.
That's how I feel as well. He's definitely just he's here now, and I'm all for it. So he's in my nominee. And last but certainly not least, for breakout star of the year, I'm blanking. I just had someone in mind, and now I can't think of them. So
tell me why it's Darby Allin.
No, because that's one. See, here's the funny thing. I could see the case for it, but Darby's someone that I've been a big fan of since his days in Evolve for the last few years. So I have you're right. He obviously has had a breakout year because, it's one thing for me to sit here and be like, oh, well, I was a big fan of his when he wrestled in front of 70 people. But, now he's a champion on a show that's getting better ratings than almost anything WWE puts out on a weekly basis. So
And he just stood in the
yeah,
ring with Sting.
right. So you know what? Yeah, all right. I'll give it to Darby. You've talked me into it.
That was easy.
All right. All right. So the next category is Male Wrestler of the Year. That'll leave us the Male Wrestler of the Year, and then the just Wrestler of the Year, which is anyone you want to put in that list. Male Wrestler nominees. My 3 nominees. They include the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins, the current WWE United Kingdom champion, Walter, and the current NXT champion, which is Finn Balor. Ernest's nominees, Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre, and the former AEW World Champion, Jon Moxley. Joe's nominees, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns, and Randy Orton. No Kenny Omega.
Wow, that's surprising. Honestly, you know why though? Because he was mostly a tag guy
I agree with
this
that.
year. Although he did have some solo shots, but he was mostly a tag guy.
I mean, yeah, like the time he won the world title.
No, I'm talking about
Yeah,
even during
other than
COVID.
that.
Like where like Heyman was on TV for a while.
Yeah.
I want to know when they last teamed together, so I can just be like, if it's more than a year, like half of the year.
Who's that?
They lost the tag belt.
Yeah, lost the tag belts to at either in August or September.
September. It is September.
Well. Anyway, let's keep the show.
And then we have Wrestler of the Year. Ernest's 3 nominations for that were Jon Moxley, Drew McIntyre, and Bayley. My 3 nominations for this one, I'll go with I'll go Asuka.
I like it.
I will go with, Joe mentioned him and how great of a year he's had. So I think I have to give him a little bit of credit. I'll go Jonathan Gresham.
Ooh.
And then my last nominee, I'll go Walter.
Walter.
I'm sorry. Have you watched this match with Ilya Dragunov, Ernest?
Oh, that match is so
No, I did not.
You can't say a word about Walter.
Oh, I want to say a word about Walter. I'm actually making him pronounce it Walter. That's all.
Do yourself a favor.
Walter's great. I think Walter's awesome.
Because that's how he pronounces his name. He's German. He pronounces it Walter.
I love
it. He doesn't pronounce it.
Seek out that match. Watch it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. One of the matches, if not the match of the year.
Oh, Walter's awesome. We love Walter.
IJS.
We need more Walter.
Joey, with your options here?
Well, I'm not letting you nominate Bayley without also putting Sasha in there. That's obvious. So Sasha gets one of my nods. This one might seem odd, but I'm definitely putting Randy Orton in there. Because you know what? Honestly, Randy Orton had a pretty awesome fucking 2020. He had some of the top feuds in WWE and, with obviously diminishing results. And you can say that they weren't always the best and that, like the Drew McIntyre one lasted longer than it needed to and stuff. But you know what? He shows up. He's a legend for a reason at this point. He's been in the company forever at this point. And they're still using him as one of the top guys, as one of the main characters. And, I think he deserves credit for all the hard work that he's been putting in. I love Randy Orton. I'm a huge fan of his even to this day. So I want him.
And he also got away with attempted murder.
I mean, look, some people go to barbecues. Some people set people on fire. I don't know what to tell you. But, he's avoided jail time. That's the important thing.
Absolutely.
And last but not least, is Roman already on here?
No.
Well, he is now, because what the fuck, guys?
I figured you were good for the Roman. I figured you were good for the Roman nominee, so I went with off the wall.
Surprised you put Austin Theory in there, Mr. Joe.
No, I mean, he's hot. He's not. I'm not dumb.
I know that, man.
So before we move on, those that are not on our list for the major categories that were on our list last year, The tag team division, we lost the Kabuki Warriors. Obviously, Kyrie retired, so she and Asuka were not nominated. From the men's, no Keith Lee, no Adam Cole, no Orange Cassidy, no AJ Styles, no Evil, and no Tetsuya Naito. And from the women's, no Charlotte, no Shayna Baszler, no Becky, and no Tessa Blanchard, as she's pretty much fallen off the face of the earth.
Yes.
Yeah, she's the first person that anyone was ever like strap a rocket ship to her, but they meant it.
I like that.
To the moon. Cameron Grimes, to the moon.
Yep.
All right, so those are the official nominees for the 7 categories in our award show for 2020. This week we'll be doing our voting via ballots, and then on next week's show we will announce the winners and the order in which they finished.
Can we do mail-in ballots? Is that okay?
Yeah, email me.
Mail-in ballots. All right. I guess this is me now, right?
I don't know. I think you're the only one left there, Chief.
Yeah, bring it home now. So, been thinking a lot this week about ratings. I know we overrate ratings and all that. And I sort of, not saying it was such me, but people in the wrestling Twitter especially. Oh my God, it's all they're talking about is fucking ratings every Thursday. Oh, NXT lost again by, and yeah.
When you think too hard, does it smell like bacon?
Turkey bacon.
Ah, nice.
No, anyway, so I saw the number recently. I can't remember the exact number, but Raw's rating was really low this week, and supposedly it was like one of, if not the lowest number they've had in like years. And it got me thinking, because everybody's talking about ratings, this and that, and because you were saying earlier today, Joe, that SmackDown's ratings this past Friday was actually pretty high. But we have a lot of opinions about that, why that's the case.
It was like the highest rated WWE show of the year.
Really?
Yeah, they got like 4 million viewers, I want to say.
Holy shit. So, it got me thinking, because that's like one of the big talking points on Twitter is about ratings week to week, whether it's, AEW, whatever it may be, whatever company it is. It got me thinking, will we ever actually see another golden era like we did with the Hulkamania, when wrestling was mainstream to the point where it was like so visible in our pop culture, or like Attitude Era, where the same thing happened again 10 years later with with Steve Austin and The Rock and how their star went out there. Because I think one of the things I think wrestling fans don't realize is people get older, and pro wrestling for the most part is still a niche. It's still, it doesn't, like, there are people who watch it, and have been dedicated for a long time and they stick with it. But people like me who loved it, then stopped and came back. So you'll always have dips in that. But I'm wondering now if the days of, Raw popping a 5 or 6 rating, in the same way it did 98, 99, are those days done?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
No, those days are done. And here's the thing. I don't think that it's because of pro wrestling itself, if I'm being honest. I think it's just kind of like those days are done for everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. Look, if you look back at like the lists of, most watched TV shows, TV events of all time, like granted, I think that you'll see like some football games and stuff like that, some Super Bowls and stuff in recent years that might make the list of like most watched TV shows and stuff. But, like fictional shows, there was a time where the most watched television episode of anything of all time was the last episode of MASH. There was a time where the most watched thing of all time was the episode where you found out who shot JR on Dallas, and I don't think that that's going to ever happen again either. I just think that culturally speaking, like we don't live in a world anymore where fictional things like that. And I know wrestling is an interesting thing because obviously, it's a sport, but it's also scripted. I think it ends up actually getting a lot more play in the same realm as the scripted stuff. And I think that's one of those things that we're starting to realize more and more, or at least we should all be accepting more and more, that wrestling's a scripted TV show. It's a scripted TV show featuring performers who are, they're putting their bodies on the line and stuff, but they're performers, they're athletes, but they're acting out roles, they're putting on a show. This isn't football. This isn't even boxing or anything like that. And the thing is, look, even boxing isn't getting the ratings that it used to years ago, So I think it actually more just comes down to the fact that, culturally speaking, in the year 2020, and as time goes on, I think, even more so, we just don't live in a world anymore where the cultural zeitgeist is that, you can draw 30 million people in to watch a big wrestling show or to watch a big episode of any TV show or anything like that. I just don't think that exists anymore. However, obviously, the truth is and SmackDown from this week does show this. If you're putting out a good quality product, if you're putting out something that people want to see, if you're putting out something that's really exciting and entertaining, people are going to tune in and watch it, And that's why SmackDown did so well this week. And I know a lot of people were saying, well, okay, they had the NFL lead-in and stuff like that. And yes, that's true. But you know what? That's not everything. You can't convince me that every single person who popped the ratings number for SmackDown this Friday was a holdover who was watching what ended up being an okay at best football game. You know what I mean? That wasn't the Super Bowl, and then we rolled into SmackDown. You know what I mean? It was a pretty middle of the road game, that then was followed by SmackDown. So, I think that SmackDown's rating being what it was this week had more to do with the fact that, the storylines on SmackDown right now are really, really well done. That Roman Reigns really is, a major star right now, and honestly, really entertaining to watch.
Well, that, and the timing of the show is correct. It's a two-hour show, which is just perfect. Raw is not, obviously. And let's face it, the promotion on Fox. Every fucking 5 minutes, I see a SmackDown promotion. Every minute, especially during football, during the football on Sundays. Like today, every commercial during the Rams Seahawks game, SmackDown.
Right.
So the promotion is different in comparison to the USA. And the thing is, even with all that, they have really been the better product even before the draft.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. I'm not surprised by that at all.
Right.
I mean, but that's the thing. If you're just talking strictly from a ratings standpoint, and if that's what you're using to gauge the quote unquote golden age or, a golden age in wrestling, then no, you're not going to see numbers that you used to see in the 80s. You're not going to see numbers that you saw in the 90s because we don't live in the world of the 80s or the 90s anymore. We live in a world now where most people watch things,
on demand
later on DVR or, on the WWE network once it's added or whatever. It's not as, oh my God, it's 8 p.m. on Monday night.
Right.
I got to make sure I'm sitting.
And let's be real too, Joe, also. Social media now is ratings as well too. So WWE social media has exploded. So you wait, while they may not get big numbers on Raw, you go through the YouTube pages, the individual, segments are drawing millions upon millions a week.
Right, exactly.
Instagram, those are ratings too. So the industry has changed in general. Event television is done. Game of Thrones was the last event television show we had.
Which one?
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. It's hard for a lot of things to get that level of attention. I mean, even even this weekend, you have the new Wonder Woman movie available to the world on HBO Max. You know what I mean? You don't have to go to a movie theater right now if movie theaters are closed near you, or, if you just don't feel safe going into one. I'm sitting here with COVID. I understand. So, even something like that, everyone has access to it right now if they want to. HBO Max is like $6.99 a month, and I think you can get a 30-day free trial. You could watch Wonder Woman 1984 right now if you wanted to. And even that still is not like this big cultural moment thing that everyone's talking about or anything. Like I think that there's just so much stuff out there, so much content, and so many different things that are competing for not even just our dollars, but our attention, period. And that's what
Oh
makes
yeah,
it really unlikely that any one thing is going to capture,
right.
such a large,
What you
like,
just said
audience.
right there has been a theme of my podcast for the last 3 months about overwhelming content and so much content, whether it's digital, podcasts, movies, you name it, Audible, it doesn't matter. We are living
Right.
in a overwhelming content era that so many things
Yes.
have our attention. This is why, look, I'm an AEW mark, right? I am, right? I haven't watched Dynamite in 3 weeks. I'm behind three
Yeah.
weeks.
No,
So other things are my attention.
yeah, no, that's exactly the thing. Like, and it makes sense. I fully understand that. And that's, but so that's the thing. If you're looking at it from that standpoint, then no, I don't think you're ever going to get another golden era like
Right.
that. If you're
Right.
looking at it from a creative standpoint, do I think it's possible? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very possible from a creative standpoint. In fact, I'd say that some of the stuff that's going on SmackDown, especially in the last month or so, is pretty damn near close to being some of the best quality stuff we've seen in a wrestling program in a long time, And the thing is, like, in the last couple of years, especially with AEW popping up and Ring of Honor kind of getting back on the ball and, all these different things, like, from a wrestling quality standpoint, I think we are living in a golden era right now. I think, like, personally speaking, I think some of the best wrestling I've ever watched in my life has happened in the last few years. And I've been watching wrestling since I was born, And it's funny because, like, I listen, obviously, to, like, Jim Ross's podcast. I listen to Jim Cornette's podcast occasionally. And I feel like a lot of times, a lot of the people who have been involved in pro wrestling for a very long time, who were fans themselves, but back before most of us were born, I think that they tend to look back at what they remember growing up as kids themselves, or what they remember from the early days of them being in the business, their glory days, as it were. And they look back at that and they say, okay, well, that was when it was the best. It's never getting better than that, yada, yada, yada. And I can respect that as their opinion. I can certainly understand where they're coming from, because that's natural. Everyone comes from it with a certain level like that. You'll always have your group of fans or former fans who will always swear to you that the Attitude Era was the greatest thing that ever happened, and that's
It's
great.
not.
That's good for you. But you know what? At the end of the day, like, I'll take now over the Attitude Era. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take the wrestling
Honestly,
quality that we get now.
honestly, outside maybe one or two, maybe three like storylines. Obviously, Austin and The Rock, Austin and McMahon, and maybe one more. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. Like, from a lot of, like I said, it depends on really what criteria you're using. But I think that there's plenty of an argument to be made that we're living through a golden era right now in pro wrestling, at least in terms of quality, And, will there ever be a storyline that captures enough attention where people are looking at it and stuff? I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. Look, and I'm only bringing this up because I did see it earlier and it did kind of surprise me. And it was a nice, like, sad but nice surprise. But, like, Brodie Lee passing away, I mean, the New York Times reported that. You know what I mean? Like, the New York Times had an article about his passing. That was that. It's been mainstream news in the last day or so, and I'm sure part of that is because of his age and all of that. But you know, it's one of those things that, again, like, I don't know, like, Pat Patterson passed away. I don't remember that making the New York Times. You know what I mean? Like, I do sort of feel like there is an aspect of it where there, you know, right now we are in a moment where wrestling is having a pretty decent run, and I think part of that is because this has been a year that's forced both companies, both WWE and AEW, and really even ROH and like almost every company except for New Japan, fuck those guys, but every other company has pretty much been in a place where they've had to try new things and think outside of the box and do their best to keep people, entertained and tuning in and wanting to, because now, you're not even, these companies aren't even competing for people's dollars anymore necessarily, not in the traditional way. They're not even trying to sell tickets anymore because there are no tickets to sell for the most part, they're and we've established like they're not going to get the ratings like they used to get. So now what are you competing for? You're competing for people talking about you on Twitter. You're competing for people, watching your YouTube videos and stuff like that. I think we're laying the groundwork for a different way to look at things. And so, you know what? Like, maybe in 10 years, when the new metric rating that everyone goes by is YouTube views, maybe 10 years from now, we are living in a time where every single video WWE puts on YouTube gets 60 million views or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's a real possibility. And are we going to sit here then and be like, well, this is a new golden era? Like, yeah, I bet we are, because that's the metric and the measuring system totally changes. But, wrestling fans, if there's one thing about wrestling fans, it's that we love nostalgia and we don't like letting go of the past. And I think that's why a lot of us still look at ratings and, look at Wednesday nights and are like, oh, look, Wednesday Night War, look, AEW did this many. Like none of that shit actually matters. We just like to pretend that it matters because it used to matter.
Yeah, I think the thing here is, we talk about golden eras, talked about Hulkamania, talked about the Attitude Era. The difference here, A, there's, a second company again, but B, you don't have to rely on one person to be the reason that you're getting ratings anymore. In the 80s, it was Hogan. It was Hulkamania. Okay. We didn't hear Savage Mania. We didn't hear Warrior Mania. We didn't hear any of that stuff. Like, sure, he had good opponents, but everyone attested back to Hogan. Attitude Era. What's the primary source here? NWO, Austin, Rock. I think this is the first time in a long time that the depth on every show, from NXT to the UK show to Raw to SmackDown to AEW, there's depth to where if the booking is done correctly, all of those shows could put up 5-star shows all the way through. The talent is there, whereas in the 80s and 90s, there was like Hulkamania, there was 7 people that you could rely on to get a great match out of. Attitude Era, there was probably 10 to 15.
7's a stretch.
That's my point.
Yep.
At the end of the day, where did the ratings go? Where some guy in a yellow t-shirt that said, eat your fucking vitamins and say your prayers went. How the fuck is that like a logical era? Like, let's talk about the era that we're in right now. I feel personally, and this is going to sound very weird, this era is better than Hulkamania. We just don't have someone to put a rocket ship on and try to label it as some certain era. You have better in-ring work. You have better storylines for the most part. Some of them are stupid, but, for every 4 good ones, you have to have a shit one. But at the end of the day, there are more homes where this is accessible. You're putting up a $4 million Friday rating. Yes, during a pandemic. Yes, it's Christmas. There aren't things to do. Okay, let's look at it from this perspective. Monday night. What are they going up against? Monday Night Football. Obviously, Monday has never been a night where they've hit slam dunks since the end of the Attitude Era. They're not going to, because there's TiVo, there's DVR, there's other things that you can watch on. You can watch it the next day, the day after that, or the day after that. Wednesday. Stop comparing the two ratings and look at the total number of people that are watching wrestling on a Wednesday night. Who gives a shit if it's for company A or company B? If you have a combined 6 to 7 million people watching wrestling on a Wednesday night, the business is succeeding. It's more successful than what it was during Hulkamania. It's more successful or as successful as it was during the Attitude Era. And mind you, we're doing this where no one can go and watch a show. At the end of the day, Golden Era, Hulkamania, Attitude Era, I don't care about any of that stuff. Give me good professional wrestling. If the storylines make sense and the in-ring work is where it needs to be, the rest of it will fall where it lays, and that's fine.
The big difference now, Mike, though, more than anything else, I think I mentioned this on this show earlier in the year, is that for the first time in my lifetime, none of these companies are building around one guy anymore. Like, obviously, Hulkamania was built around Hulk. You had, for a while, it was built around Brett and maybe Shawn to an extent. Then you had Austin and The Rock was built around him. And you had Cena for a long time. This is the first time in the last 6 years really hasn't been built around just one guy anymore. It's built around a foundation or a roster, which is a great thing, honestly.
Hold on. It hasn't?
What do you mean hasn't?
You haven't had Roman Reigns shoved down your throat every fucking week that he's been on TV, whether he's been good guy or bad guy? Hell, we had him tell everyone in the world that he had fucking cancer. You mean to tell me that they haven't built this motherfucker around him? He was the third best wrestler in the fucking Shield. One of them doesn't even wrestle there anymore. If you mean to tell me that they haven't built this company around him, you are living under a rock.
Could I argue between 2014 and 2018 that maybe he shared it with Brock Lesnar also?
Not really, because Brock was never there.
Yeah,
Brock would come to WrestleMania and then he'd be gone.
But he was Hogan, though.
But they did build Brock as like an attraction.
Right.
Building him as an attraction and building the entire company around him are two different things.
True. Very true.
I mean, hell, we built the fucking Ultimate Warrior up to be an attraction, and he had the title for fucking however long,
9 months,
and was there every week.
Yeah.
But Brock has a match at the Rumble, does a promo at whatever shows in between, has a match at Mania, and then we see him again at like SummerSlam or Saudi Arabia if they need him for numbers. I mean, it's really Roman's company. Who on Monday Night Raw do you compare to him right now? To me, no one.
Star power, no one. No, star power, no one. I mean, Roman's certainly number one guy, but I don't think they're building the entire company around one guy in the same way. Just the way their structure is in general avoids that. They have three different brands now.
I'm sorry. Before this last draft, and they became more, quote, serious on the whole fucking not doing the whole fucking brands thing, Roman was on every show with the exception of NXT.
Do you think, wait, now follow me here, okay?
Okay.
Do you think that part of it is that, like, there's not a main guy who's relatable anymore? Because, like, here's the thing, right? We all know that part of the appeal of Steve Austin and, you know, the way that the narrative goes, the way that I've always heard it is like, oh, part of the appeal of him was that it was like, you know, a chance for people to live out their fantasy. Like, oh, I hate my boss too. And
working class man.
Right. Like he's kicking his boss's ass. Like, that's so amazing. I'm going to watch it and, you know, pretend that's my boss, you know? So yeah, like people could sort of relate to Austin as like, right. Like the blue collar, you know, beer drinking, like, well, hell, that's me, you know? And I think even Hogan in the 80s could be arguably looked at in a very similar way. Because, like, yes, he was a larger-than-life character and stuff, but he was also, you know, 3/4 of the way bald and, you know, a little bit on the heavier side and stuff. He basically looked like your dad after he had, like, 5 too many at the July 4th barbecue half the time, you know? That was Hogan. So, like, that I do think that that's part of the reason, too, why Hogan was he was actually someone who I think people could sort of relate to in a weird sort of way. I don't think you have that anymore, Like Roman Reigns might be the guy that they're building the company around in a lot of ways, and I agree with Mike on that one. But Roman Reigns isn't someone that anybody can relate to. Like, I don't know anyone out there who's like, oh shit,
Even John Cena
my
can relate to.
my family don't respect me either. I
Even
can relate to Roman.
Could you even say John Cena can relate to also? John Cena?
I don't think so.
Really?
I think that was one of the failures of Cena. Like, I love John Cena. I think John Cena is an incredible talent. I think he gets a really bad rap for his in-ring work. I think he's great. But I don't know that I'd ever sit down and call John Cena the most relatable guy to most people. I think he comes across as a nice guy. I think he comes across as like a genuine hero, but I think he comes across like Superman. And I don't know about you, but Superman's one of my least favorite comic book characters because he's not relatable.
On your relatable rankings, I would probably put Austin number one. Obviously, the most relatable
Easily
situation.
number one. With a bullet.
Number two, I would probably go. This may surprise you. I actually may go Roman, more relatable than Hogan.
Really?
Yes, I'll explain in a minute. I'd go Cena 3, and I'd actually probably go Hogan last because, while, yes, it looks like he just drank a 6-pack too many in beer league softball after he had a long day at the office.
Did 6 lines, drank a 6-pack, whatever.
Exactly, 6 lines, 6-pack. Also shot himself in the ass with steroids. I'm sorry, no one that I ever related to or was relatable to, took steroids in the ass.
Well, yeah.
Everybody then took steroids, though, Mike. That's like.
But that doesn't make me. But, oh no, hold on. How old were you when Hulkamania was going on?
4 years old.
Did you know someone that was taking steroids in the ass?
Do I know personally nobody? I don't know. But
okay,
they've all admitted it.
Relatable.
They've all admitted it. I'm saying. I'm gonna say they all admitted it.
No. I'm not talking about wrestlers. Joe is talking about from a relatability standpoint to your life. Is anyone you know taking steroids when Hulkamania was going on? Yes or no? Can you answer that question?
Well, I was a child. Like, I don't know anybody.
Then it doesn't relate to you. But John Cena being fucking Superman doesn't relate to you either because guess what? You don't know fucking Superman. But Roman Reigns having an angle where his family doesn't love him, there's a lot of people in the world whose family don't love them. That's a hell of a lot more relatable than fucking saying your prayers and eating your vitamins and fucking taking steroids.
Oh, I don't disagree with you 100% on this topic for the record. I don't disagree with you 100%. So let's be clear there.
I think the most relatable current talent, and based on the push that they gave him at the time, and even now to a certain degree, would actually probably be like Daniel Bryan. And I think it's one of the reasons why you had that big moment at WrestleMania 30, which at this point's already like almost 7 years ago, which is crazy to think about.
I know.
But you had like that big moment with him and stuff because he's a relatable guy. He's the guy who has been working hard at his career for
underdog. The underdog.
Yeah, like he's the guy who's been working hard in his career for 10 years and is still not getting the promotion he deserves, He's the guy that's being held down for like the more popular guy or the cooler looking guy or whatever, Those are things that people can relate to. And I think it's one of the reasons why Daniel Bryan's push, like as much as I think the WWE was dumbfounded by the fact that Daniel Bryan became as popular as he did, and I do believe that. I do believe they never expected him to become as popular as he is and was. But I do think that that's part of the reason why he did become so popular and why he is so popular, because he's a relatable character.
I think another relatable character right now is Big E.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And he's someone that they're starting to push more. He's really relatable to a lot of the world. But the way I look at it is, Austin's relatable because, everyone has that one boss growing up that they wanted to go punch in the face. Roman
Yes.
with this current, with this current storyline of, oh, my family and looking out for my family. That's relatable because we want to do that. No one was really relatable to superhuman fucking John Cena. No, no one's going to pick up a fucking bus.
And honestly, Hogan's in that same category with Cena.
Yeah, because, I didn't know anyone that was shooting steroids in their ass.
Well, that and the whole Superman thing, because Hogan was a superhero to a lot of people in the fucking 80s as well, too. So
That's the thing. If you're talking about who's the bigger comic book character, yeah. Are we going to have an era where there's another larger-than-life comic book-esque character? Probably not. Because at the end of the day, like, who was the last one? Cena before him. Hogan, Darkseid Undertaker. You could have him fucking as a comic book character. There aren't guys being built as comic book characters anymore because every one of them is now on social media. It's now who are they as a human being? And I think that's the thing. This whole thing has changed based off of the accessibility of not only the in-ring performers, but how they live their day-to-day outside life. And at the end of the day, what's relatable? Roman trying to provide for his family. It's a hell of a lot more relatable than John Cena picking up a bus or, Hulk Hogan telling some random 4-year-old to say his prayers and eat his vitamins and all that fun shit. Because in a world where there's a lot of hate going on, it makes sense for someone who's, has hate within his own family and some member of his family trying to tear him down. People go through that shit on a daily basis. So from the relatability standpoint, like, I see Roman as one of the more relatable guys in wrestling in the last, 5 years. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think this era of wrestling is something that people are taking for granted, and eventually it's going to go, and it's like, oh, well, then we'll have the Lucha Libre era or this era. It's like, got a lot of really good wrestling going on right now.
I love this era.
I do too. The problem is there's a lot of people that want to compare it to an era that they really shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, who cares about insert random era here?
Right. Anyway.
You have video on, right, Ernest?
Uh-huh.
You're sitting in a closet. Do you need help coming out?
You can see me, can't you?
Yeah.
All right, MVPs. Long one.
Obviously, right? Brodie Lee.
Yep, that was mine. So
I had one before that, but yeah, it's Brodie.
Okay. Well, fellas, it was a great year again, this podcast.
No. It was an awful fucking year. We made it through this fucking year.
Of this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
We had a great 6 episodes.
6 episodes. You motherfucker. Joel, you sound good, actually. You sound really good.
Yeah, I feel like shit. No, I'm gonna rub some more Vicks on my chest because I am Latino at heart. Tell Carol, she'll be proud of me.
Oh no, she told me to tell you that she's very proud of you for going the Vicks route.
Oh, we do Vicks
before the show started, but
Oh yeah, no, look, I tried to fight this thing like a white person, which is Advil, and that wasn't working.
Stupid.
So now
Not to get racist, but nah, you gotta get to the culture. When it comes to get healing up and stuff, you gotta tap to the culture.
Yeah, it's real. No, it's real. Like, Robitussin helped me more than anything else, and Vicks is helping me right now.
Sorry, Mike.
I'll be the first one to say that's stupid.
All right, fellas. I guess I'll see you next year.
Yay!
Yay. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.